Before you leave, could you drop by the store in the corner and pick up another bottle for me? Jessie hollered at her niece Brenda once more. It wasn't even mid-afternoon yet, and Jessie was already asking for her second bottle. A deep sigh escaped Brenda's lips. Aunt Jessie, the store owner already refused me once. I doubt she'll let me buy another bottle, Brenda explained. Tell her I found work and I start tomorrow, Jessie said. But Auntie, that's not true. You've been cooped up inside for weeks, not even making an effort to seek a decent job. Brenda finally exploded with frustration. So, after everything I've done for you, that's your response, huh? You little ingrate. I welcomed you into my home when no one else would. And now you have the audacity to lecture me about my life? Brenda gazed at her aunt, her eyes brimming with sorrow. She felt a sense of powerlessness as she realized that there was little she could do to steer her aunt back onto a path of wellness. Jessie had been falling back onto her old habits for the past few weeks. The last time she pledged to stop, she stayed true to her promise, offering Brenda a glimmer of hope. But now, Aunt Jessie had relapsed once again. As Brenda trudged towards the store, planning to plead for another bottle, she found herself contemplating her life. Each step was heavy with the weight of her predicament, her heart aching as she considered the difficulties she had encountered. The burning question that relentlessly spun in her mind was, why her? Why had life or God chosen to heap upon her these burdensome trials? Brenda was still just a young girl, yet her life had already been marked by numerous hardships. When she was but a small child, her father, serving in Afghanistan, was tragically killed. Raising Brenda alone was a daunting task for her mother, Angela. Navigating the complexities of being a single parent was a tough challenge, and there were times when Angela struggled to make ends meet and properly care for her young daughter. Angela was particularly susceptible to falling ill. There were periods when she was bedridden for months on end, unable to care for herself, let alone Brenda. As a consequence of her frequent illnesses, Angela's employers began to express their dissatisfaction. Initially, they hinted at it subtly, but eventually they told her outright that they couldn't afford to constantly accommodate a sick employee. Having to leave job after job due to her health, Angela would often return home and sob into her pillow out of sheer desperation. Their family was always caught in a financial crunch. There were times when their dinner was nothing more than slices of bread dipped in salty sunflower oil or bowls of plain noodles. Brenda attended school in clothes that were threadbare and worn out. Children can be brutally honest at times, voicing their observations without sugarcoating their words. Brenda bore the brunt of this honesty whenever she walked into school. She was treated as an outcast, with whispers about her poverty trailing behind her. She grew accustomed to the muted voices of her classmates, talking about her hand-stitched blouse or a skirt that had long since fallen out of fashion. When Brenda turned 14, she suffered another devastating blow. Her mother, the only person who truly cared for her, passed away. Her Aunt Jessie, Angela's sister, took her in, but Brenda's quality of life saw no improvement. Aunt Jessie often berated Brenda, calling her a lazy parasite, even though Jessie herself seldom lifted a finger to do any housework or work in general. Assuming Brenda was mature enough to manage the household, Jessie burdened her with all the domestic responsibilities. To escape, Jessie frequently turned to alcohol. Brenda was often dispatched to the store to fetch her aunt's liquor. The store manager, a close friend of Jessie's, seldom denied her credit. Jessie cherished her evening bottle of wine. When money was tight and she had racked up a substantial debt at the store, Jessie would visit her neighbor who made homemade cider. By the end of the month, they'd be reduced to dipping bread into broth to satiate their hunger. Money was like water in Jessie's hands, quickly flowing away. They'd pay off debts only to end up broke again. Drunk, Jessie would often blurt out, "You're such a burden. I wish you'd find someone and leave my sight." These hurtful words would inevitably reduce Brenda to tears. Jessie's friend Evelyn, who worked at the store owned by her son, often found herself the topic of Jessie's conversations. Jessie was envious of Evelyn's financially stable family. She often steered conversations towards Evelyn's wealthy son, John, asking Brenda if she was attracted to him. Brenda would deflect these questions, saying she didn't want to discuss it. When Brenda turned 18, Jessie began to fantasize about the comfortable life Brenda could lead if she considered John as her future husband. However, Jesse's interest in Brenda marrying John wasn't driven by concern for Brenda's future, but rather by her own selfish desires. If Brenda were to wed the store owner, Jessie anticipated that her own life would improve dramatically. She fantasized about visiting the store even without any money, and she would then be related to Evelyn, who she believed would generously share groceries with her. She also counted on the prospect of having her debts absolved. But Brenda, now grown up, had no intention of facilitating her aunt's grandiose plans. The once docile and obedient Brenda found her courage and voiced her unwillingness to fulfill her aunt's financial fantasies. Brenda had grown wary of her aunt's incessant manipulation, especially as Jessie had become increasingly bold in suggesting Brenda marry John. One day, Brenda reached her breaking point. "Auntie, I won't be a pawn in your plans," she declared, storming out and slamming the door behind her. After calming herself a little, she returned to gather her few possessions. She pulled out a small box from behind the closet, a box where she had been secretly stowing away any money she managed to save ever since moving in with Jessie, who was unaware of its existence. There was enough money in the box to cover rent for a small room. Brenda didn't forget to take her father's medal, one of the few mementos she had of him. It served as her talisman. With the money she had, Brenda could afford not only a modest room in an elderly woman's apartment, but also enough food for the first few weeks. Once she had moved out of her aunt's house, Brenda found herself considering her future. College was out of the question as she simply couldn't afford it. One day, she picked up a free newspaper from a supermarket. As she scanned through the employment vacancies, she realized that many of the jobs required specific qualifications she didn't possess due to her lack of formal education. Then her eyes landed on a few ads seeking a janitor. She chose a phone number at random and dialed it. The HR manager hired her on the spot. The office had not been cleaned in 3 days. The company Brenda started working at had a reputation for high staff turnover due to the toxic work environment. After signing the contract, Brenda got straight to work. On her first day, she entered one of the larger offices filled with computers and busy workers and began mopping the floors. "What's that smell?" Brenda heard a shrill voice shout in her ear. It belonged to an extraordinarily beautiful, yet equally mean woman, who reminded Brenda of those gorgeous yet wicked cartoon characters. This woman, Rebecca, had striking dark eyebrows, almond-shaped eyes, hair the color of a raven's wing, high cheekbones, and a pointed chin. A single glance was all it took to perceive the maliciousness hiding beneath Rebecca's beauty. "What are you gawking at? Can't you smell it? Your mop is rotting. Go wash it or get a new one," commanded the toxic beauty. As Brenda passed by 2 men sitting near the exit, she overheard them rating her body on a scale of 1 to 10. Brenda was indeed quite attractive, but her beauty was of a gentle, endearing kind, quite unlike Rebecca's. Brenda had a kind face, large gray eyes, a high forehead, childlike plump lips, and thick hair pulled back into a careless ponytail. Even her out-of-fashion old clothes couldn't hide her slender waist and pronounced curves. Her shy demeanor and downcast gaze as she mopped the floor made her seem like a modern-day Cinderella, enduring the scorn of her stepmother. The men whispered their assessments and opinions about the new janitor, careful to keep their voices low so the office queen Rebecca wouldn't overhear. In their opinion, Brenda was a beautiful girl, if only she dressed better. Unfortunately for them, Rebecca had keen hearing and managed to overhear their whispers. It hadn't even been a full day since Brenda started work, and Rebecca was already discussing Brenda's attire with her female colleagues. Rebecca couldn't stand the idea that another woman in the office, who despite wearing old clothes and being a janitor, could also be considered beautiful. Brenda felt a surge of frustration, a desire to snap her mop in half and express her disdain for them all. But the reality of her situation forced her to restrain herself. Swallowing her rising tide of emotions, Brenda rinsed the mop and continued her work, choosing to ignore the scornful mockery from the women in the office. Each day at the office was a torturous ordeal for Brenda. Rebecca not only badmouthed her to colleagues, but also to the bosses. Some employees found Rebecca's relentless attacks odd, assuming that there must have been some prior feud between the two girls. They were oblivious to the fact that it was simply a competitive move from Rebecca. Brenda was seen as a threat that might divert the attention Rebecca was used to receiving before Brenda joined their office. The only person who felt sympathy for Brenda and sensed something was wrong was a man named Tim. He had affectionately started calling Brenda Cinderella from the day he first saw her. One evening, Tim stayed back in the office even after his workday was over. He waited for Brenda, as her workday typically ended long after everyone else's. When Brenda finally emerged from the office, she was taken aback to see Tim approach her and invite her to dinner at a nearby cafe. They quickly struck up a friendly conversation, and Brenda was pleasantly surprised by Tim's polite and attentive behavior. But the next day, one of Rebecca's friends confronted Brenda in one of the office rooms. "Are you out of your mind, spending time with Tim?" she began. "He's Rebecca's boyfriend. Didn't you think about that before talking to him? They're engaged, for crying out loud. Do you know what she'll do if she finds out you were out with her boyfriend at a cafe? Just wait till she becomes a department manager, then you'll see some real fun." Nancy ended her tirade with a malicious grin. The following day, Brenda faced an unsettling surprise. As she was passing a conference room, she saw Rebecca and a few other girls chatting. Rebecca noticed her and beckoned her to come in. As Brenda walked in, the first thing Rebecca said was, "I love your vintage clothes. Which thrift store did you pick them up from?" The other girls looked surprised, uncertain whether this was a serious question. Then Rebecca added, "And your shoes? They're like antique Spanish boots." It was evident that she was creatively mocking Brenda's outfit, aiming to belittle her in front of everyone else. The other girls giggled in response, trying to align themselves with Rebecca's apparent humor. They didn't want to sour their relationships with someone as ambitious as Rebecca. From that moment on, Tim stopped inviting Brenda out. If they crossed paths in the hallway, he'd feign a phone call or shift his gaze elsewhere, unable to look directly at the girl he was beginning to have feelings for. He was ashamed of his betrayal, having laughed along with everyone else at Rebecca's pointed jibes. Although he had fallen out of love with Rebecca a long time ago, the thought of breaking up with her was out of the question. He liked his job and the pay it brought. He didn't want to cross paths with the future department manager. Tim had his hopes pinned on a promotion, and he was ready to use any means necessary to get there. He was even willing to suppress his budding feelings for Brenda to achieve his career goals. After Rebecca successfully squashed what she saw as an attempt to steal her boyfriend, she strutted around the office, taking pride in her victory. Rebecca, the office queen, was so pleased with her public belittlement of Brenda that she left her alone for a while. Brenda's sense of dignity, however, clashed with the harsh reality of her situation. If she quit now, she risked not getting paid. Unfortunately, when she signed her contract, she had not paid close attention to the fine print, which stated that if she chose to quit within the first month, she could face a delay in payment or not get paid at all. Brenda didn't want to lose the pay from 3 weeks she had already worked, so she had no choice but to stick it out. Her savings were dwindling. And then there was her pet. Brenda couldn't bear the thought of leaving her playful kitten, Simba, hungry. One day, a small kitten had managed to sneak into the office. Brenda's heart melted at the sight, and she had hidden the tiny creature from an irate Rebecca. When the workday ended, she took the kitten home with her. The old lady who was her landlord didn't mind the kitten. Brenda named the small creature Simba. When she was down to her last bit of money, she split the last packet of milk between herself and Simba. The eagerly awaited payday coincided with the day the big boss, Mr. Frank Jefferson, decided to visit the office. As the head of the company, he often visited the branches. Everyone was intimidated by the boss, everyone except Rebecca. She had somehow managed to earn the trust of the war veteran. Mr. Jefferson admired Rebecca's sharp intellect, her beauty, and her bold audacity. When they toured the various departments, Mr. Jefferson, of course, stopped by his favorite one too. Spotting Mr. Jefferson, Rebecca immediately sprang up and headed to meet him halfway. On her way, she accidentally knocked over a coffee mug that had been teetering on the edge of the table. The remaining cold coffee splattered across the floor. Swiftly, she kicked the mug under the table, and then a wide grin spread across her face. As she neared Mr. Jefferson, she greeted him warmly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Jefferson. It's been too long. We've missed you greatly." With a slight tilt of her lips, she almost made it seem as if she was about to give the boss a kiss. Casting a quick, vengeful glance towards Brenda, who was dusting a nearby printer, she started to weave her web of deception. "Actually, we barely had time to miss you. Our HR seems to be slipping up. They just can't seem to hire the right people. The janitor is causing issues again. She's inexperienced and the entire office has lost its polish." Smoothly, Rebecca linked her arm with Mr. Jefferson's, guiding him towards her desk. She gestured towards the coffee stain on the floor and nodded in Brenda's direction. I don't know what to do about this young girl. She just doesn't seem to understand the responsibilities of her role. I mean, she needs to mature." Mr. Jefferson furrowed his brows. He was no longer a young man, but he had an imposing stature and a straight-back posture. His military background still played a huge part in his everyday conduct. Knowing that Mr. Jefferson, a detail-oriented and disciplined man, despised any form of mess, Rebecca saw this as the perfect opportunity to get rid of her perceived competitor. Mr. Jefferson examined Brenda for a few seconds before asking her to meet him in his office after he had finished his tour. His tone was firm, a clear warning signal that didn't bode well for Brenda. Later in the day, when Mr. Jefferson had concluded his rounds, Brenda entered his office, nervously biting her lower lip. "So, what's the issue here?" Mr. Jefferson inquired, his gaze piercing. "Maintaining the cleanliness of the office spaces is your direct responsibility." Mr. Jefferson observed the flushed face of the young girl standing in front of him. "I'm sorry, sir," Brenda responded in a quiet voice, "but I cleaned the entire office this morning. I don't know where that coffee stain came from." With a deep breath, Brenda decided to reveal her suspicions. "I don't think I'm well liked here, sir. Rebecca especially doesn't seem to like me, and I believe the coffee stain might be her doing. I suspect she's trying to get me fired, sir." Suddenly, Brenda found the courage to lay it all out in the open. With a thoughtful expression, Mr. Jefferson gently tapped on the wooden table with his pen. "And what is your name?" he asked in a friendly tone. "Brenda Luckner," she stated confidently. Upon hearing the rather uncommon surname, Mr. Jefferson shifted slightly in his chair. "Brenda, may I ask your father's name?" He probed gently. She dipped her head momentarily before lifting it with visible pride. "My father's name is Peter, but he—" Brenda started, her voice wavering, but Mr. Jefferson interjected before she could finish. "Passed away in Afghanistan?" Brenda's eyes widened in surprise, and she seemed to freeze in place. Mr. Jefferson slowly removed his glasses, focusing his gaze on Brenda. "Peter Luckner," he murmured to himself, struggling to maintain his composure. His emotions were a whirlwind, and he fought to hold back the tears threatening to spill over. "A man of true honor," he managed to say before finally surrendering to his emotions and allowing the tears to fall freely. He took a moment to compose himself, wiping the tears from his eyes. It was difficult for him to meet Brenda's gaze again, but after a few moments, he managed to regain his poise and continued. "Your father was an exemplary man. He was someone who always kept his word and was a devoted patriot of his country. I was the one injured and abandoned on the battlefield. Your father, with his rank of major and me a mere second lieutenant, he personally ensured that no one was left behind. It was revealed that Brenda's father had lost his life while courageously pulling his comrade out of the line of enemy fire. By now, tears were trickling down Brenda's cheeks, but she maintained a dignified expression and held her head high. Every time her father was brought up in conversation, it held a significant meaning for her. She cherished his memory deeply and was immensely proud of him. Brenda, you're very much like your father," Mr. Jefferson commented warmly, appreciating the proud glint in her eyes. "He was always focused and dedicated to his job, just like you, minding his own business." He paused, contemplating the issue Brenda had mentioned about Rebecca, and decided, "So you're suggesting that she's the bully, huh? Let me handle the situation, Brenda. Please go ahead and continue with your work." The next morning, Brenda arrived at the office, only to be surprised by an older woman in her uniform bustling about the workspace. Her heart fluttered uneasily as she wondered what had occurred. Seeking clarity, she headed towards the office of the HR manager. Knocking softly, she entered the room. Mrs. Jones, the HR manager, quickly stood up with a bright smile upon seeing Brenda. "Brenda, come in. I was actually expecting you. Please have a seat. Would you like a cup of coffee?" Brenda merely nodded in affirmation. "Mr. Jefferson asked me to brief you on your new position. How about trying your hand at public relations? He thought you might enjoy it there. You can start in as assistant and learn as you go." Confused and lost in her thoughts, Brenda walked over to her locker and opened it. She found herself automatically picking up her cleaning supplies, her duster and rag, a habitual routine ingrained from her previous job. "Excuse me, young lady, may I ask what you're doing?" An older woman's voice echoed from behind. It was the new janitor. The woman had taken over Brenda's former role, mistakenly thinking Brenda was rummaging through her locker. Snapped back to reality, Brenda chuckled. "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I used to be the janitor here. I didn't mean to intrude. Today's my first day in a new role." The older woman smiled kindly and commented, "Oh, so you're the girl Mr. Jefferson told me about. You were doing a fine job around the office." Brenda returned the smile and said, "I'm more than willing to assist if you ever need help, ma'am." In the afternoon, Mr. Jefferson made his entrance and requested Brenda to join him in his office. "How are you finding your new position?" Mr. Jefferson inquired, his smile warm. "I'm not too familiar with it yet, but I'm eager to learn," Brenda replied. "That's the spirit," he approved. "How's your mother doing? Where are you currently living?" Brenda shared their story, and once she finished, Mr. Jefferson hastily jotted down an address on a piece of paper. Rising from his chair, he retrieved a set of keys from his drawer. "Here's an address, and these are the keys. The apartment is vacant. Please move in and don't say anything more." Brenda looked at Mr. Jefferson, her expression filled with unsaid words. Noticing this, he reassured her. "Brenda, this is nothing in comparison to what your father did for me. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today." "Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. I'm grateful for your kindness." That very day, Brenda returned home and began packing her belongings. Mrs. Clark, her elderly landlord, appeared from her room, curious about the sudden activity. "Mrs. Clark, I've been offered a place to live, rent-free, and it's closer to my work. I plan on moving out tonight, but I'll cover the rent for the next 2 weeks." "Oh dear, you don't have to do that. I've grown quite fond of you, Brenda. But when you're away work, Simba keeps me company. Would you consider leaving him with me?" Brenda gave Mrs. Clark a warm hug, smiling. After saying her goodbyes, as she stepped outside, her phone buzzed. Her salary had been credited into her bank account, but the amount was substantially more than she had anticipated. She quickly texted the payroll clerk, pointing out the error, but the reply she received informed her that the company had included compensation for moral damages. It appeared that Mr. Jefferson had dismissed Rebecca, explaining that her behavior was tarnishing the company's reputation. As soon as Rebecca was fired, Tim began to hover around Brenda, even inviting her to a high-end restaurant. Although Brenda wasn't keen on the idea, Tim was persistent. Throughout the evening, Tim chatted incessantly about various topics, and Brenda listened patiently, willing to give him an opportunity to express himself. However, he never once addressed his previous actions, nor the fact that he hadn't supported her when she needed it most. Instead, he constantly showered her with compliments, praising her intelligence and beauty. When Brenda responded neutrally, Tim realized she wasn't falling for his charade. As their dinner came to a close, the waiter delivered the bill, discreetly placing it at the edge of the table. Tim suggested splitting the bill, to which Brenda smiled and responded, "No, I've got this." Brenda's life took a positive turn in Mr. Jefferson's apartment. She cherished her new job and was relieved from the constant worry of her prior struggles. She progressively grew more involved in her department's operations and was well liked by her colleagues. However, she did remember those who had not treated her well before Mr. Jefferson recognized her. One day, returning home, she noticed that her apartment door was unlocked, a state she never left it in. Her worry grew, considering the possibility of a break-in. She cautiously entered, spotting a suitcase near the entrance. In the living room, a man a few years her senior was fast asleep on the couch. Confused, she sat opposite the couch, quietly observing the unfamiliar man and debating whether or not to wake him. After a few minutes, the man's phone, sitting on the glass table in front of him, began to buzz. Brenda leaned in and saw Dad flashing on the screen. The pieces started falling into place in Brenda's mind. After a moment's hesitation, she decided to answer the call. "Eric, where are you, son?" It was Mr. Jefferson's voice. Brenda stepped into the hallway to speak quietly. "Mr. Jefferson, this is Brenda." She began struggling to contain her amusement. "Brenda, how did you—" "Oh, goodness, I completely forgot to inform him. I'm so sorry, Brenda." "No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. Can you wake him up? I'll ask him to leave." "No, you don't have to, Mr. Jefferson. Let him rest. I'll be okay." "All right. I'm sorry once again." Eric slept soundly as if he hadn't slept in days. He was clear from his exhausted state, fully clothed except for his jacket and shoes, that he was extremely tired. By 9 p.m., Brenda realized Eric wasn't going to wake up by himself. She began preparing dinner in the kitchen. When the table was set, Eric was still sound asleep. She even tried playing music on the speakers to rouse him, but to no avail. Finally, she approached him, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. At her touch, his eyes snapped open immediately, catching Brenda off guard with his sudden alertness. Eric jolted upright on the couch, blurting out, "Excuse me, who are you?" Fast forward a few months, and Eric and Brenda had become inseparable. They enjoyed each other's company immensely, sharing countless moments of laughter and camaraderie. Eric held the position of vice president in the company and was frequently away on business trips. When he and Brenda started dating, he consciously decided to take a break from his travels. Despite his relative youth, Eric was an accomplished businessman. He understood that relationships required as much care and commitment as his professional life. Thus, in the first 6 months of their relationship, he treated Brenda as if she was his one and only. He made certain she knew he trusted her implicitly and that she could place her full trust in him too. Their relationship bloomed like a well-tended garden, rich with trust, respect, and deep affection. Eric and Brenda were more than just a romantic couple. Their bond was akin to that of siblings, underpinned by a foundation of mutual understanding and shared experiences. They were open books to each other, concealing nothing and sharing everything, from their smallest daily triumphs to their deepest insecurities. This profound connection was particularly valuable for Brenda. She had spent most of her life navigating the world with a small, tight-knit circle of people she genuinely cared about. Her life was a testament to self-reliance and resilience, but her relationship with Eric added a new dimension of shared warmth and companionship. Their unpretentious affection for each other was evident in their every interaction. They supported each other in times of difficulty, celebrated each other's victories, and learned from each other's experiences. Their shared laughter was the soundtrack of their life, filling their shared spaces with warmth and joy. They navigated life's ups and downs hand in hand, cherishing the journey more than the destination. The love they had for each other was genuine and profound, a testament to their commitment to each other. One day, Eric extended an invitation to Brenda for a family dinner, making her first meeting with his mother. The evening was delightful, filled with warmth and engaging conversation. Eric's mother was a gracious and charming woman. Her radiant smile was as welcoming as her open heart, putting Brenda at ease. After the meal, the two women found themselves in the kitchen, washing dishes and sharing stories. As they stood side by side, elbow deep in the soapy water, Eric's mother began to share tales of her family. She painted vivid images of Eric's childhood filled with his endless curiosity and boundless energy. She spoke of the milestones they'd celebrated, the challenges they'd overcome, and the indelible memories they'd created together. As she listened, Brenda couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging. These stories provided her with a glimpse into Eric's past, an insight into the family she was becoming a part of. The warm and inviting atmosphere created by Eric's mother allowed Brenda to feel more connected to Eric and his family, forging an even deeper bond between them. As the evening wore on, Brenda learned something about Eric that she had not known before. He had been adopted as a child by Mr. Jefferson. It came as a surprise that Mr. Jefferson, unable to have children of his own, had ended his first marriage because of this. He later met Monica, Eric's mother, and they decided to adopt. Eric had been raised with all the love and care his parents could offer, and it was evident that this adoption had only added another layer of love and compassion to this tight-knit family. The revelation explained the profound bond between Mr. Jefferson and Eric, as well as the special place Brenda held in their hearts. Despite the surprise, Brenda appreciated the openness with which this story was shared. It spoke volumes about the trust and acceptance that was foundational in their family, making her feel even more welcome and cherished. It added depth to her understanding of Eric's past and the unique paths that had led them all to this moment. The journey may have been unconventional, but the love they shared was unmistakable. Mr. Jefferson held a profound respect for Monica, his wife, who had chosen to share her life with him despite his inability to have children. Her decision to marry him, knowing they would not have biological children together, signified a depth of love and commitment that he treasured. She had not only accepted him with his limitations, but had also embraced the idea of creating their family in a different way, through adoption. This profound decision demonstrated Monica's empathetic nature and unwavering support, attributes which were reciprocated in Mr. Jefferson's deep reverence for her. Their shared journey in building their family, starting with the adoption of Eric, was a testament to their shared values of love, resilience, and acceptance. Eric, growing up in such a nurturing environment, had been a keen observer of his parents' mutual respect and unconditional love. In fact, their relationship had a significant influence on his own values and approach to life. The way they treated each other with kindness, respect, and unwavering support became a guiding principle for Eric. He admired his parents' ability to communicate, solve problems, and navigate life's ups and downs together. Their love story wasn't just about shared joy, but also about shared growth and resilience. They stood by each other, overcoming challenges and celebrating triumphs, which taught Eric the importance of companionship and compromise. Such an upbringing imprinted on Eric a deep understanding of respect and empathy towards others, which he carried into his own relationships. This could be clearly seen in his relationship with Brenda. He treated her with the same respect and affection that he had seen his parents extend towards each other, building a relationship grounded in mutual trust and understanding. This familial foundation undoubtedly contributed to the deep and compassionate bond that Eric and Brenda shared. Once the pleasant dinner was over, Brenda and Eric returned to their apartment, a shared space filled with warmth and memories. For Brenda, the reality of her present situation was somewhat surreal. It felt like she was living in a dream, one too good to be true. Every detail of her life seemed to fall into place like perfectly fitted puzzle pieces. From her satisfying job in public relations to her deepening relationship with Eric, everything was aligning in a way that felt magical. She found herself reflecting on her journey as they settled into their cozy living room. There she was, no longer the lonely janitor from months ago, but a cherished part of a loving family and a successful professional thriving in her career. The transformation was so drastic yet so seamless, it was hard for Brenda to fully grasp, but as she glanced at Eric, who was sitting beside her with a soft smile on his face, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life may have thrown countless challenges at her, but it had also gifted her with unexpected blessings, and for that, she was profoundly grateful. Each passing day only strengthened her belief in the power of resilience and the magic of new beginnings. Indeed, for Brenda, life felt beautifully magical. In just a few more months, Brenda found herself engaged to Eric, with their wedding date fast approaching. One tranquil evening, as they were immersed in wedding preparations, discussing the guest list and invitation designs, Brenda felt compelled to share something with Eric. "Eric," she began, her voice softened by a wave of emotion, "I've seen a lot of hardship in my life, and honestly, I never imagined that I would find someone like you. You've taught me so much, changed my life in such profound ways. If it weren't for you, I might never have found the courage to say what I'm about to say. I want to invite my aunt to our wedding. I hope you wouldn't mind?" Eric's face lit up with pure joy as he heard Brenda's words. Being well aware of the complex relationship between Brenda and her aunt, he had quietly hoped that one day Brenda would find the strength to let go of past grudges. Understanding the importance of forgiveness and healing, Eric believed that harboring resentment did more harm than good. It was a realization he had hoped Brenda would arrive at on her own, and hearing her now, he was filled with a sense of pride and relief. This was a significant step for Brenda, a testament to her growth and resilience, and Eric couldn't be happier for her. After all, Jessie, Brenda's aunt, was the one person who had taken her in after the devastating loss of Brenda's mother. While Jessie may not have been able to provide much materially, the life she gave Brenda was filled with invaluable lessons. Brenda had learned how to face adversities and navigate through life's rough patches under Jessie's care. She had learned resilience, self-reliance, and the importance of hard work. The trials and tribulations she experienced in her early life, in a sense, prepared her for the journey she would eventually embark on. It was a complex tapestry of gratitude and resentment that Brenda held for her Aunt Jessie. But now, as she stood at the precipice of a new phase in her life, she felt ready to extend an olive branch, to acknowledge Jessie's role in her upbringing, and to invite her to witness the woman she had become. Eric and Brenda's wedding was a warm, intimate affair, attended only by those who held a significant place in their lives. Among the select group of attendees was Mrs. Clark, the elderly woman who had extended a hand of help to Brenda when she needed it the most. Aunt Jessie, too, was present. Throughout the event, she maintained a quiet demeanor, subdued perhaps by a sense of guilt about her past actions and the complex relationship she had shared with Brenda. The beautiful, resilient woman standing at the altar was a stark contrast to the young girl she had taken in years ago. As she watched the proceedings, Jessie couldn't help but be consumed by a blend of pride, regret, and a newfound hope for reconciliation. After giving a heartfelt speech, Expressing his love for his son and new daughter-in-law, Mr. Jefferson pulled Brenda aside for a private chat. "Brenda, there's something I've been meaning to tell you," he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. "I've known about you, your mother, and your aunt for a long time. In fact, I tried to reach out and help you numerous times, but your mother always turned me away." Mr. Jefferson's eyes softened with regret as he continued. "She never forgave herself for what happened to your father, and she blamed me. The guilt has haunted me ever since, but I never lost hope that one day I could make things right." The revelation left Brenda speechless. She had never imagined that the benevolent Mr. Jefferson had been quietly influencing her life from the shadows. The realization struck her with a profound sense of gratitude. In that moment, standing amidst the joyous celebration of her wedding, Brenda felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had come a long way from her days of hardship and uncertainty, and now, surrounded by people who cared for her, she felt ready to embark on this new journey. Always be grateful for what you have. You never know what could happen next.